Ex-prisoners of Reddit, what was the scariest thing you've seen on prison? I'd say it's the time I was out on the exercise yard in Durham Prison, UK, standing against the fence talking to someone I know. In the middle was people walking round in a circle like normal. This guy steps out of the circling crowd and slashes a guy right next to me and steps back into the crowd. The guy looks at me and starts saying, "Have I been slashed? Have I been slashed?" Honestly, the side of his face was wide open. I thought I could see his teeth. I just exhaled and leant back against the fence, pretending I'd saw nothing. Nothing else I could really do, and I wasn't getting involved in whatever it was that was happening. Anyway, the alarms went off and the screws pulled him out of the yard. Another thing that wasn't scary really, more shocking but has stayed with me, was when I saw somebody hanging when I was in North Allerton Young Offenders. You had 3 landings, floors, on the induction wing. The bottom landing was used as the association, where you went out for an hour a day and made phone calls and such. Anyway, I'm waiting to use the phone and a cell alarm went off on the landing above. A screw went to the door and starts screaming for help and opens the door. In your pad you had like a shower board, is the best I can describe it, that blocked off the view between the toilet and your double bunk. As I looked up I saw a lad hanging off it, pretty much blue in the face. The screw is grabbing him by the legs and trying to keep him up, and another screw runs in and cuts him down. Loads more screws turn up and they have him laid out on the landing doing CPR on him. They put what I can only describe as some sort of shoehorn down his throat. There's mumbling and they carry him off, and I never saw him again. The prison was small, so if he was alive I probably would have seen him again. Honestly, prison is rife with mental health issues and just what I can only describe as a volcano of emotion waiting to erupt. I could honestly type many different stories. From rapists getting their head stoved in for a solid 30 minutes while a screw sits not even a meter away, to stuff like waking up to my pad mate screaming because has sliced his arm open and stuck a pen right inside it somehow and the blood is everywhere like some sort of horror movie. Anybody who implies it's like a holiday camp is wrong. Mate, people who have never been locked up will never understand. I mean, don't say it like it's some privilege or something. Most of you guys were locked up for valid reasons. It wasn't something I saw so much as something I heard. Don't read if you have a weak stomach. This guy came in. Very scary dude. He was openly a necrophiliac. The guy was doing time for desecration of a corpse. I was just a kid when this happened. So I was in the 24-year-old block, known in many jails and prisons as the jungle. Kids in jail are young, curious, and refuse to believe anyone out there has seen or done worse than they have in general. So people started asking this guy questions, trying to call his bluff and get him to explain what he was really in for. He stuck to his story that he got caught ducking a corpse in a cemetery. So here's where shit got bad. They started asking questions and everyone realized he was dead serious. No pun intended. He explained to us that it's very simple to duck a dead female body. He said you simply dig the corpse up, lubricate the anus, puncture if necessary, and slide a curling iron inside for 5-7 minutes. He explained the vagina's close proximity to the anus caused this to warm the vagina up and make it feel lifelike. He said any scarring or burning to the anus didn't matter, as this was all about making her feel alive while you needed her and nothing else mattered. The utter matter-of-fact manner in which he explained it all, coupled with his jacket papers showing what crime he was incarcerated for, showing he was in for desecration of a corpse. No one asked him anything after that. No one messed with him or got in his way. Not even groups of dudes ever messed with him. I saw some savage beatings, met some killers, rapists, armed robbers, truly scary, awful people. Nothing stuck with me like that, though. 12 years later, I still think about that guy sometimes and get the creeps. This makes me want to be cremated even more. They just add water and use you as lube. Not me, but this is a story that makes me shiver whenever I think of it. There's a guy who was in a large gang and went to jail many times between the age of 18 to his late 20s. He's in his 30s now and has changed, left the criminal underworld and now travels the country and holds lectures to teenagers about his life and how if you're involved with gangs, seek help to get out. Don't ever go down that path. The first time he went to jail, at 18 years old, it was night and he was trying to sleep. There was a loud scream that woke everyone up. Both guards and other workers ran to the cell where the scream had come from, where one inmate had thrown a liter of boiling cooking oil that had been boiled at the highest temperature for over an hour in another inmate's face. A worker there panicked and didn't know what to do. So this woman, I feel so bad for her. She had no idea what would happen. Took a wet cloth/towel and put it on the man's face. When they tried to remove it, the man's skin and flesh just peeled off with it. Pretty much his entire nose was ripped off, along with parts of his cheeks, chin, an eyelid, etc. Just hearing about it is horrifying. He's still alive. Last that the guy who told the story heard, the man has had several surgeries. Cosmetic surgeries? Is that what they're called? To get his face fixed. It's still horribly disfigured. Yikes. I've got to wonder how someone gained access to that much oil and the facilities to heat it. Also, that type of surgery will be considered reconstructive, since it's fixing damage. Cosmetic implies elective things like facelifts and such. I live in Sweden, where prisons let inmates learn how to cook. In all ducking honesty, I have no idea why. Maybe for when they'll be released. Maybe to pass the time, and they're all given a small amount of products every week. The inmate that threw the oil had heated it before lights out, and had saved up oil for a few weeks. Inmate who was suicidal, and selling heroin ate everything and died. So I had this friend I hung out with all the time when I was a teenager, and his dad had been to prison a few times. I used to go over and drink/smoke weed with my friend and his brothers, and sometimes his dad would hang out with us for a bit. One night when we were all drinking, he decided to tell us all a story from his prison days. When he was close to being released, he decided he wanted to do something nice to surprise his wife. So he cut his penis and put some balls underneath the skin and let it close/heal, with the idea that it would make sex better for her. Guess as a thank you for waiting for him and taking care of the kids while he was in prison. This was years later, and he still had them in. I could lived 1,000 lifetimes without hearing that story and been perfectly happy. I too could have lived for 1,000 lifetimes and never heard that story and been perfectly happy. Putting tiny pellets under the skin of your penis will stimulate a woman more like a ribbed condom, but it's a ribbed penis. I can live with this story, but I'm taking it to the grave. The cartel cornered me because they thought I snitched on them for a cell phone. Dozens of eyes staring me with the intent to kill, until my ex-bunkie, one of the leaders, came over and vouched that I was legit and never said a thing about the stuff he did. The guy they were really looking for checked into solitary the next day, and I was cool again. Damn dude, I bet Jad was tense. I had a similar thing where a key holder of the app got released, and cause we were close, we kicked it, but I don't believe in his politics. A rumor started that I snitched on him, and he was in solitary. It was a tense day till one of his buddies got a hold of him, and he vouched for me. It's kind of a long story, but Jat's the simplified version. I had been side by side with all of them for over 3 years. Ran the library, read books all day, minded my own business. It was hot and nosy one night, so I wanted to catch a breeze by the window. Then a squad comes busting in, and they thought I was flagging them down to come over. I'm like, guys, I get out in like 2 months. I don't give a shit about anything. Why would I do that? Not really scary, but messed up. Was locked up in Japan, and there was a Korean guy who came in. You weren't allowed to talk at all, and when you talk to the guards it should be in Japanese. The whole place is silent basically. We're locked down except for 20 minutes to shave in an outside corridor and brush teeth morning and night. Showers once in 5 days. Timed 15 minutes. Unless it falls on a weekend or public holiday, in which case 24h lockdown. It messes with your head when you can't talk, so some of us did at the risk of getting ducked. This Korean guy couldn't speak a ducking word of Japanese, so he was ducked. They brought in a translator who only spoke English and Japanese, the duck, to try and talk to him, but nothing happened. I spoke some basic Korean and whispered to him through the bars at the back to relax and stop talking, but he kept going. The guards came up and told him in Japanese they were gonna beat him to death if he didn't shut up. He kept on trying to say things, and they got a couple guys and forcefully dragged him to an solitary isolation cell with no windows or any entertainment whatsoever. We have no view of the isolation cell, and he screamed, cause it sounded like they were beating him. A Chinese inmate was frequently denied water, no tap in the cell, and abused verbally daily. He cried when I spoke to him in Chinese, cause he hadn't heard it in forever. Rampant racism in Japanese jails. People love to ignore human rights for incarcerated people because they think we aren't human. I've seen men treat other men worse than animals. It's horrible. K. I'm just impressed you can speak Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and English. Also, cells in Japan seem horrible. I hope you and those other people are alright now. My ability to speak Japanese saved me from the racism in the jail. I can speak many languages. The guards were quite impressed that my Japanese was so good. And I never caused trouble in the jail. I talked to my cellmate all the time. My mindset was, stay calm. You're gonna get out. You're not gonna do time. They actually warned me not to talk to the other foreigners who could speak English, Chinese and Korean. But I did anyway. One of the guards told me, what are you doing? A guy like you shouldn't be in jail. Get out and do something with your life. Well guard, I'm on Reddit. Look at me go. Some years ago I was at high security prison for 8 months. One time we were walking to the rec yard, this one guy jammed a steel rod into the back of the guy in front of him. Blood coming out of his mouth like vomit. Having to walk by that dude, acting all casual not to cause concern from guards, was like our inauguration to adulthood. Steel rod was this training device. Manuals. That's the scariest part about lockup for me. People will duck you up if you help them or if you bring attention to it. So for example, if someone is getting jumped and you step in, you get your ass beat too. If you contact medical, you get labeled as a snitch. It's terrible. Not a prisoner, but a former prison guard. One of our corporals got stabbed over 30 times, with no one around to help. Blood spray had practically painted the office red. Amazingly, he survived, but never came back. Another officer got beat so bad he was unrecognizable, all for a stupid gang initiation. Only death during my time was a guy that was improperly restrained, in the dark, without a camera, and he choked to death because he was wearing too many clothes and had toilet paper in his nose. Because he knew the CERT, prison SWAT, team was coming to get him. My cousin at the mental health prison had some wild stories. A guy with his testicle on a spork, another would open his abdominal stitches and play with his own intestines. I could not imagine working there. Someone super close to me was in prison, and it was scary for me too because he had been a cop and so had to go to a special prison with people that had to be separated because they were cops, mobsters, gangsters, etc. At first he got visitors from multiple friends, but eventually I was the only one visiting him, and he had very little contact from anyone, not even family. Then when he got out it was like he was a shell of the man he used to be. He was intimidated by people and cowed away from people just unlike the supermarket. It was so weird seeing a once confident and strong man turn into a timid and scared one. A guy that gave himself a Prince Albert while he was locked up. He was very proud and liked to show it off. Edit. Corrected typo. He liked to do what now? He liked to show everyone his creation. I work in a county jail. One I worked at before was ducked. Saw a guy get his head slammed against the wall by other inmates until his skull cracked because he was the only white guy in an all black pod. He survived but was still in the hospital after a brain bleed. Whenever I quit that jail, another guy was stabbed in the eye with 3 pens tied together in his sleep. The guy who stabbed him was a 50-something-year-old white guy who did it to earn protection from a gang in the jail. One guy started popping off with the N-word one night, so the inmates in with him tied him to a bunk, cut off all his hair so rough he had gashes all over his head, pissed on him, beat him, and sodomized him for 3 days. Every time we came through to do a walkthrough they threw a blanket over him, so it looked like he was just sleeping. He finally broke loose and ran to the door one night while we were doing medpass. One pod boss, unofficial leader of a pod, inmate who asserts himself as the alpha was said to have raped anyone who challenged him for control of the pod. But we never could prove it. One guy swallowed a razor blade, passed it without damaging his insides somehow, dug it out of his shit and slit his arm from his wrist up to the inside of his elbow. Mental inmate would fill his socks with his own shit and stomp around in it all day. Angry old man had the ability to bend over and projectile shit all over the walls of his cell whenever he got mad. Guys cutting their dick. Not in prison. Never been. But when I was at school, we were given a talk by an ex-prisoner in the US. One of the things that I still remember him saying was when he saw someone take another inmate's head off with a shovel. Apparently it took quite a few attempts to get the whole thing off. Now I know how nearly headless Nick died. Thanks. Not a prisoner myself, but heard from a friend that you have to shit in front of other prisoners. It's a nightmare for someone with psychosis and anxiety issues like him to poop without privacy. On top of that, he was jailed for a crime he didn't really did, but got involved in as he was part of the group. Sucks man. Also, he told stories that some isolation cells like those for suicidal prisoners had just a simple hole to do all your business. Not even a toilet/bathroom. Not prison but in jail. After the first few weeks of getting visitors there was a period where no one came to see me. Being shut off from the world and feeling like everyone else is moving on without you is scary. Wasn't in prison, but I've been wrongfully thrown in asylum during an insurance scheme. I saw a kid get his hand broken for no goddamn reason. I saw people thrown in isolation and put in straitjackets just for standing in the wrong place. And worst of all, I saw a kid pinned down crying his eyes out, screaming for help whilst being held down by 3 adults as a fourth administered a tranquilizer. Those places are cruel and unusual and have no place in modern society. A friend just got out a few days ago. He did 5 years in California on a level 4 yard, which I think is the highest. Snyway. He said while he was in there, a guy came in who was what they consider an affiliate. They aren't part of the gang, but have done things in the past to help and thus earn protection. So, this quiet guy gets matched with a big ugly lifer, tatted to the gills, and with an anger problem. Well, after a few weeks, after lights out, this big lifer starts picking on the little guy. No one knows what they fought over, but at head count the next morning, the co looks in and finds the little guy smoking a cigarette with blood everywhere and nothing but a skull next to him. Apparently, the little guy won, then removed all the organs and flushed them down the toilet. Then he cut big sections of skin and flushed those. Then the muscles. Even the bone was cut up or broken and flushed. Then he had some Folgers as instant coffee and a cigarette. I mean, the best part of hacking up is Folgers in your cup. Never did any serious time, but I was in and out of county jail a handful of times in my younger years. One ducked up thing: racism. It's encouraged and the whole system is built around it. You have to hang out with your own. As a light-skinned Rodriguez, that caused a little issue for me. Next is the extortion: food, money, goods, service or services, whatever you can think of. It's in short supply and high demand. Fish are easy prey. You can pretty much take anything from them with the promise of protection/friendship with no follow through. The prices of items in the commissary are ridiculous. A Lunchable that's $2 at your grocery store is $5 in jail and 3 weeks expired. Piggybacking on a fail thread. This kind of funny thing went down in general population. I decided to just be quiet and keep to myself, which worked out okay. Perhaps I was lucky. I found a discarded book. It was a Harlequin romance type thing. Not really what I like, but I took the book to my top bunk and tried to read. If someone made eye contact with me, I would break it and turn the other way. Maybe that's why I didn't notice the commotion next to me until it escalated. The guy on the top bunk near me suddenly screamed that enough was enough, and he picked a fight with the guy below him, yanked the blanket off, and they started to fight. The situation was this: they had been bunkmates for 4 days and the lower guy was a chronic masturbator and the other guy was sick of his bunk bouncing around. Fairly quickly, guards broke them up. The masturbator was a thin white guy with a complexion problem. The other guy was a medium-build Hispanic dude. I didn't want any part of the questioning by the guards and just pretended I wasn't there. Yet I was really surprised at the outcome. The masturbator was dragged off to solitary or a different pod, and the other guy got to stay, unpunished. People just attempted to calm him down. A few minutes later, all had settled, and then the door opened. In came a young guard, who happened to be female. Her job was to collect the personal items of the masturbator and break down his bunk. She wore gloves, of course, and that was probably not her favorite part of her day at work. 2 days later, it was a Saturday morning. Lots of new inmates from drunken mistakes the previous night. A new guy got the lower bunk, as long as his mattress was a different one. He pretended not to care, but he had a funny brief exchange with the other guy where he said he only had to stay 3 days and was pretty sure he wouldn't be masturbating. I've seen a guy read a book of how to use your prison pockets with a sledgehammer next to him. He was a worker at a renovating building. An old lady in the cell next to mine started like a moaning wailing sound and said she didn't feel right. We were all yelling for the co's overhead intercom system on the old Cook County jail. By the time the lazy bastards decided to haul their asses to her room, it was too late. She died from something like a heart attack or stroke. That may not sound scary, but until you hear someone in a cell next to you die in the dark, so close to people who are supposed to help, you can't imagine the scariness. That messed me up for a long time. And it wasn't the only time something like happened. There were suicides, drug overdoses, terminal illnesses, violence. But that one old lady never left my mind. Not me, but my mom worked at the prison for a bit. One time she told me about how one of her workers went to take a shower. He was a germaphobe, so he showed like 5 times a day. One time they told him not to do it. As he walked in there was only one other person. The guy was in the corner with his eyeball hanging from his head. Was really shocking, the guy said. Even with that guy hanging, the other guys still showered. IDK what happened after that, but sounds like it was messy. Wait, what? Your mom's co-worker, who was also a prison guard, went to shower, and an inmate was in the shower with him, and his eyeball was hanging out. I'm pretty sure I read that wrong. I saw a guy get shanked and bleed out. I saw a guard beating a black guy for no reason. I never had a real scary moment, but there was an unsettling day at our facility. This kid, T. Trailer, was everyone's homie, and we all talked to him. He was one of the star football players, and so he was released on Friday. He was shot and killed on Sunday. The next day, the POs let us know. It was quiet for the whole day, and it even started raining. Dark, grey, gloomy skies. Rest in peace. The worst on prison was the Dementor. A good friend's brother got out. After serving 2 years, I asked him this question. Not the most messed up, but what I found most fascinating. He said he was forced to help some whites jump a big fat black dude in his cell. He said they went in and just started punching him all over. He said he punched the guy so hard in the side of the head that his eyeball popped out of its socket. How is punching someone's eye out not considered messed up? Okay, so I went to prison for about a week in Sicilian, and while I was in there I saw a guard getting beat in the halls. Not me, but I got told this story a few years ago, and I warn anybody before continuing, it is highly graphic. Rape warning. So there was a guy who lived in this foster system that my friend was in. He got sent to prison for raping his grandmother to death. Actually happened. I will try to find the news article. And when he got sentenced, a few inmates found out what he did and took him into the showers and proceeded to shove a wooden broom up his ass until it was gushing blood. Then poured soap, shampoo and whatever else they could on the nut or asshole so that it would be harder to clean and heal. I think he died from some internal injuries later that day or week. Honestly, detention was bad. 30 minutes of isolation will change a man. I'm not sure what to call it, so I'm gonna anal spillage. A prison mate a few cells down from me got his anus destroyed, and for like 3 days shit and blood just spilled out of his ass at random intervals during the day. Okay, so I was only in jail for about a week when I was 17, and this has ducked me up. My cellmate, who by chance was my friend's ex, Asked the guard for his sleep meds after I got my antidepressants, and she told him no because it was considered a narcotic and they couldn't give it to him without a direct doctor's approval. He takes the news well and goes to bed. Then in the middle of the night I woke up to him tossing and turning. He got and walked to the wall and stared at it for a minute, then screamed duck and started bashing his head against the wall until he split his head open and blood was running down the wall. I got up and called over the guards. I got transferred to a new cell while they put him in a straitjacket and helmet, and when I got to my new cellmate was just blankly staring at the wall shuffling cards. I tried to make small talk and eventually asked him what he was in for, and he said arson and attempted murder. He was 14 and literally stayed up all night shuffling cards till about 8/9 in the morning. After reading these I can say people are really ducked up. I was inside most of the time. Never got to see the roof, so I don't know what's on the prison. I could tell you plenty about what goes on in the prison, though. Does mental prison count? I was in the adult holding area of a mental hospital. This guy was on spice, and he was bugging TF out. The next day his trip was over, and he was a normal dude again. Then he came in the next night yelling, "Hey, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe."